Let me be one of the first to tell all the fathers in the room, happy Father's Day to all of you. You're here at church on Father's Day, and so for that, I give you a standing ovation all by myself, and I'm going to applaud you. Well, I have to be here. They pay me to be here, so I'm working today on Father's Day, but you're here, right? And so I thought about this morning, you could be at the lake, you could be fishing, you could be golfing, you could be getting the barbecue ready and smoking that thing, getting it ready. You could have slept in, but your wife woke you up and brought you to church, and so you are here, and I'm happy about that. And if you're watching live stream, well, if you're a dad, you're probably not watching live stream, so you'll catch this later on in the week, but you're here. And so to all the dads in the room, three things are going to happen today, and this service is designed with you in mind. First of all, it's going to be helpful today. What we talk about today is going to be helpful for you and your relationship with your kids and your kids with you, so it's going to be helpful. It's going to be fun. We're going to do something a lot of fun at the very end of the message that it's a special thank you for all the dads out there. And most importantly, it's going to be short. Yes, it's the greatest message you dads have ever heard. And so today's Father's Day. Now I woke up this morning and I'm not going to ask because I asked on Mother's Day and the response was horrible. So I'm just going to keep this response myself. But I woke up and Brianna had brewed a cup of coffee and she was making homemade donuts this morning for Father's Day. I mean, it just blew me away. And so they're having a cup of coffee and all the kids run in, it's great. They're there. And it's David and Kara. And David's here and we're talking happy Father's Day, this kind of stuff. And Kara, she's sitting on the bed. I think the cartoons are on and she kind of looks at me and she goes, "Today is Father's Day, Dad?" And I'm going, yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, she's about to just tell me how much she loves me, and this is the greatest dad to walk the planet. And she goes, "Wait, today is Father's Day, Dad?" And I go, "Yeah, Kara, it is." And she gets these big old eyes and this big smile, and she goes, "They're going to have root beer floats at the church today." And I was like, yeah, they are. So we do have root beer floats for all the dads and everyone here. But I look at her and I was like, it's also my day. And she just laughs. Like, didn't say Happy Father's Day. And so, if you would like to make up for that, you can just say Happy Father's Day. And if you're a lady, please don't get offended when I say you too. It's out of habit. And so it's like Merry Christmas. Hey, you too. So if you say Happy Father's Day and I say you too, it's anyway. So just forgive me on that. We are in the middle of a series called Aha, the book of Proverbs, and there was a verse that we talked about last week that I said, hey, mark that, circle that, we're going to talk about that next week. And so let me just start there this morning, and we'll springboard into our topic today. So last week there was a verse, and it's Proverbs chapter 4, verse 24. And I said, mark that, circle that, and here's what it said. The verse said, avoid all perverse talk, stay away from corrupt speech. Avoid all perverse talk, stay away from corrupt speech. And today we're talking about the weight of your words, the power of your words, whether you say them, write them, post them, text them, tweet them, however you communicate, the weightiness, the power of your words. And we have all seen politicians, athletes, business leaders, community leaders, and yes, even preachers get in some serious trouble and heat because of things that they have said, posted, tweeted, written, or said in public at large. And we see these things that those individuals say and the damage that they cause, and every now and then it's just a stark reminder of the power and of the weight of our words. And you may not be in a position, you may never be in a position where your words are going to be displayed on the front page of the paper or on the main news channel at night, but your words as an individual carry weight. And words matter because once it is said, it can never be unsaid. Words matter because once it is said, it can never be unsaid. It's like the old illustration, once you squeeze out toothpaste, you can never put it back in. right? Once you say something, whether you mean it or not, with the right tone or the wrong tone, once you say it, you can never put it back in. And when our kids were little, toothpaste was the bane of our existence in our house. And they had gotten into this little kick of just when we'd buy them toothpaste, they just squeeze it out. They thought it was fun to squeeze out. And I can tell you from personal experience, it is impossible to put toothpaste back into the tube. And I can also tell you from experience, toothpaste is really expensive. So when they'd squeeze it out, well, they just wipe it with their toothbrush and start brushing their teeth from there. But once words are said, it can never be unsaid. And so the power and the weight of your words matter. And as a father, I think you inherently know this. You know your words carry weight in the marketplace or in business negotiations. You know your emails, the right tone or the wrong tone can make a deal work or not make a deal work. You know your words carry weight with your friends and with your buddies on whether you're deciding what to do for the weekend or go on a guy's trip. So you know your words carry weight. But as a father, I would make the argument that the weight that your words carry the most, they have the biggest impact on, not so much your business coworkers or employees or your bosses, but it's your kids. It's your kids that hang on every word that you say, whether they're little kids or whether they're full-grown adult kids. As a father, your words matter. And then as a child to your father, your words matter. And so we're going to talk about the power and the weight of your words. And I can tell you that my dad told me something over 30 years ago that he said it just like once or twice. And it's one of those things that just stuck with me. I thought this was a normal thing. I found out that it was not normal as I grew up and went to college, but it's man, my dad said it, so now I just do it every time, and I've passed it on to my kids. And over 30 years ago, I was a little kid, and every night my dad would make the coffee at night. He would get it ready in the coffee pot and it'd be ready to brew in the morning. And every time my dad opened up a brand new can of Folgers coffee, he had this routine that he would stir up the new coffee grounds and he would smell it. He would just stir it up and he'd smell it. And I walked in and go, well, Dad, what are you doing? He goes, oh, son, you always want to smell a fresh can of coffee. I was like, what? He goes, oh, and he goes, come over here. And I'd come over and he'd stir up the Folgers and I'd smell it. And I was like, man, that smells really good. And so it became this thing. Every time he opened up a brand new can of coffee, he'd stir it and I would smell it. And I grew up and went to college and made coffee there and I'd stir it and smell it. And my roommate's like, what are you doing? I'm like, don't you guys smell new cans of coffee? And they're like, no, that's kind of weird. And anyway, but now my kids, and they know, you can ask them, that whenever I open a can of coffee, Dad, let me smell it. And they come over. And it's one of those things that, man, 30 years ago, it was a little thing that was said, but it stuck with me. The power and the weight of your words matter. And so what you say, write, post, text, tweet, what you communicate matters in the world around you, and very importantly to your kids. If you got a Bible, go ahead and grab it and go to Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs chapter 15, we're going to start in verse 1. And he talks about the weight of words, the power of your words, and whether you're a father or whether you're a child, it really pertains to both. And let me just say this first and foremost. I said this at Mother's Day. Let me reiterate again at Father's Day. And that fatherhood is not determined by DNA. Fatherhood, neither is motherhood, but fatherhood is not determined by DNA. And so as a father, you could be the biological father, stepfather, foster, adopted. You could be an uncle, you could be a cousin, you could be a grandfather, you could be a neighbor, you could just be an older gentleman pouring into a younger man or younger woman. Fatherhood is not determined by DNA. And so maybe you have lost a child, but there is still somebody in your life that you can be that father figure to. Or maybe you're a son or daughter and your biological father may not be in your life, but there is an older man that you can look up to as a father figure. And so fatherhood is not determined by DNA. It is determined by a relationship of love. And when you understand that, then you begin to understand the power of your words. And here's what he says, Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1. It says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Verse 2, the tongue of the wise makes knowledge appealing, but the mouth of a fool, what? I just wanted you to say that in church. The mouth of a fool, what? Belches out foolishness. Now, it's Father's Day, so I had to preach on the verse that had the word belch in it. I mean, we've got root beers after there. It's a whole thing. You're going to love it. Verse 3, the Lord is watching everywhere, keeping his eye on both the evil and the good. Look at verse 4. Gentle words are a tree of life. A deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. And that little word crush, it would mean the word breach or to destroy. And so here's the simple question I've written down for us today. It's simply this. Do your words build up or do they break down? Do your words build a person up? Do they encourage them? Do they encourage them to grow mentally, physically, spiritually, relationally, emotionally? Or do they tear that person down? When you think about the words that you write or that you say or that you text, when you think about the tone that you use, it's really two options. They're going to build somebody up. It's going to encourage them. It's going to help them grow. It's going to help them in life. Or it is going to tear them down. What you say can never be unsaid. So it's so important for all of us to understand the weight that our words carry, especially from a father to a child. Because there are those moments as kids, and they're either all-star moments or lower than low moments. They made the team, they're starting, they are first chair, they got the lead part in the dance, they got straight A's, they made honor roll, and there's that moment where you can encourage them, you can cheer them on, or you can be that person, well, I see you got all A's, but what's this one B? Well, I know you're starting on JV, but why couldn't you start varsity? There's that where you can encourage them, or you completely tear them down. Then those moments as kids, where they get cut from the team, they didn't make the play or the recital, they got broken up by their boyfriend or by their girlfriend, they failed the test, they failed out of school, and they're in this lowest of low moments. And you have the power as a father to encourage them and to build them up, to say, hey, you know what? I believe in you, I'm with you, let me help you with this. Or you can say, hey, if you had worked harder, if you'd tried harder, if you'd studied harder, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So there are those moments, those weight of the words in your mouth and what you say and what you text and what you communicate to your kids. Do they build them up or do they break them down? And I want to go back to verse 1 and verse 2, and I want to just talk about a couple things. Look at verse 1. It says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. A gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Gentle words versus harsh words. Gentle words, they deflect anger, but harsh words, man, they stir it up. And these are words that are spoken in the heat of the moment or when emotions are at an all-time high. It's those moments where you are tired, you're worn out, you're exhausted, and then one little thing happens, and how do you respond? How do you react? There are those moments where you're just pushed to the brink, you are stressed out to the max. Something is said, something is asked, or something is done. And in that moment, what you say will either deflect anger and calm it down with gentle words, or it will stir it up like pouring gasoline on a fire. And so what you say matters there in the heat of the moment. And here's just what I found from personal experience. The less that is said in the heat of the moment, the fewer regrets you have about that moment. Let me just say that the less that is said in the heat of the moment, when emotions are high, tempers are high, the less that is said, the fewer regrets you have about that moment. And some of you have been in those moments and you've said things that, man, they sounded good up here in your mind. They felt good coming out of your mouth, and all of a sudden you see the destruction in the person's eyes. Because it was said there in the heat of the moment. It was impulse, it was emotions, it was there in the heat of the moment. Gentle answers, calm answers, they deflect anger, but harsh ones, biting words with barbs in it, gosh, they will stir things up and they can cause more collateral damage than any of us can imagine. Your words matter. Choose them carefully. And so in the heat of the moment, is your natural reaction just to say the first thing that comes to the top of your mind? Or is it to stop and say, Lord, let me filter these words through you? Lord, let me filter this email through you. Lord, let me filter this text message through you. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have ever written an email, but you didn't send it, and you woke up the next morning and you're so glad you didn't send it? I saw this lady back there raise her hand really fast. Yes, okay. I've written an email, and it feels unbelievable to write, doesn't it? You're just singing them left and right and left and right. It's like, and you're about to push send, and then there's like this little thing going, well, maybe Brianna should read this. Hey, Brianna, she reads that. She goes, you didn't send that deal. I was like, well, no, but like that finger's an inch away from the button. And she goes, no. And so it's that moment where gentle answers, they will deflect. Anger, they'll calm the situation, or harsh words, man, they will stir it up. How many of you, just by a show of hands, you have made an impulse buy there in the moment? You've gotten home the next day and you're going, why in the world did I buy that item? Just by a show of hands. Okay, very good, put it down. How many of you dads, or maybe I should ask you kids, how many of your dads have made an impulse buy like that? You're going, why did dad? Okay. My dad did that. That's how I wound up with a gigantic red canoe on my back porch right now. It was last Christmas. He was in town. We're at Academy. He's like, I want to buy the kids a canoe. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, I want to buy in this red one right here. So we walked out of Academy with a red canoe. It's one of those deals. I'm an impulse buyer, not at canoes at Academy. Let me tell you my weakness on impulse buys. My weakness are these little roadside produce stands. And I love them, like the boiled peanuts and little, vegetables and that kind of stuff. And over spring break, we were driving and we stopped at this little roadside stand. And me and Brianna, the 4 kids, we walk in there. And I walk in, there's this sweet lady behind the cash register. And she must have just seen a sucker walking into her store. And we walk in and she goes, hi there. And I'm like, hey. And the kid's like, can we get this? I was like, yeah, get whatever you want. Like we're living like kings in the days of Rome. And I'm like, yeah, vegetables. And so Brianna's getting vegetables and things like this, and they're getting a little ice cream and stuff, and we put it all up there, and I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. I mean, it's one of those deals where you just like, you have no concept of time or money. I mean, it's just in there, and this, and putting all this stuff. Oh, that sounds great. And all of a sudden, there's this bag of chips. And I looked at the lady, I go, what are these? And she goes, oh, sweetie. She says, those are homemade kettle chips. I was like, oh, she goes, you want to try some? I was like, yeah, I do. So she opens up the bag and I try. It was like unbelievable. And all the kids, she go, I want to try one. So she lets them all try one. And I was like, oh man, we got to get some of these, Brianna. And Brianna's just shaking her head over there. And the lady's like, I'll get you a fresh bag. And I'm like, oh, how many people have tried that bag? Anyway, so she pulls out a brand new bag, and it's like a tiny thing. They're super expensive. I don't even know how much they cost, but she puts it up there and she rings it all up, and I pay and everything, and I'm about to walk out, and she goes, you know it would go real good with those kettle chips? I was like, what's that? She goes, homemade pimento cheese. She goes, you want to try some? And I was like, I do actually. And I took it and it was unbelievable. And I go, I need an $8 tub of pimento cheese. And I bought it and just remember driving home and, you don't want to, say you're wrong in front of your wife. But I was like, why did I buy this whole tub of pimento cheese? And then I looked at it and I promise you the label on this pimento cheese was called Yes Ma'am Pimento Cheese. It's like, there's no way you could say no to that. But I remember getting home and I just looked at Brianna and she knew what I was thinking. Like, why did I buy like all this stuff? And I tell you that because there are things that you have said in the moment where you go, why did I say that? Why did I write that? Why did I respond that way in that moment? Gentle words, they will deflect anger, but harsh words, they will stir things up like pouring gasoline on a fire. Your words matter. Choose them carefully. Look at verse 2. Let's go back. After he talks about the gentle words versus the harsh words, he talks about the appealing words. Verse 2. It says, the tongue of the wise makes knowledge appealing, but the mouth of a fool belches out foolishness. The two words are appealing, and the word belch, you can just replace the word with stinking, smelling. It's what that word really means. It means to pour out stench. And so when you speak, are your words appealing? Do they build somebody up? Do they build your kids up? Do they build your dad up? Or do they stink? Do they pour out like stench? You kids, if you've ever said something to your mom or to your dad and they get this strange look, it means you're pouring out stench with your words. It means you say things like, well, you don't understand. And they're like, really? They're like, well, you don't, college was different back then. You didn't have all the temptations at college like I do now. And you're like, oh, really? There are those moments where your parents are saying something, and do your words appeal or do they pour out like stench? When you're talking to your kids, when you're talking to your spouse, when you're talking to your coworkers, are your words appealing? Do they build them up? Do they encourage them? Do they challenge them to do the right things? Or do they pour out like stench of foolishness? What you say matters. How you say it matters. And so the way you say it, is it appealing or does it pour out like stench? And let me just talk to you kids about your fathers. And whether you're a kid still at home, maybe you're college, maybe you're just a full-grown adult, but you've got a relationship with your father. And maybe it's rocky or maybe it's fantastic. And if it's rocky, I just want to give you something that I think will help it out. And if it's fantastic, I want to give you something that I think will make it even better. And the fact is that to the kids, to their fathers, your fathers need as much encouragement as you do. Your fathers need as much encouragement as you do. And as a kid, it's easy to think, well, they should build me up and pour into me and build this and me and me. And yes, that is true, but as a kid, do you return the favor? Whether you're a little kid or a high schooler or a college, or maybe you're a full-grown adult, and as you get into adulthood and maybe become a father of your own, you understand this, but fathers need as much encouragement, maybe if not more, than you do as a child, because your father is out there and trying and doing their best, and to say thank you, to say, Dad, I'm proud of you. To say, Dad, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. Dad, I know you're working 2 jobs. Dad, I know you're working 3 jobs. Dad, I know you lost your job in the recession, but still kept this family afloat. Your words that you speak to your father, are they appealing? Do they build him up, or do they pour out like stench? I'm going to let you in on a little secret, your kids to your dads. You've all seen the #1 dad coffee cups. If you have, just say, we have. Okay, good. I'm going to let you in a little secret that your dad's not going to tell you. We as dads, we love getting gifts like that. We're going to play it off like, oh, we don't win. But we're thinking, I really am the #1 dad. Like of all the dads in the world, I'm #1. And when you say that, when you give a gift, when you write a meaningful card, you think, well, it's not that big. It means so much to your father. And so your words to your father, do they appeal to them? Do they build them up, or do they pour out like stench? And maybe your relationship with your father has been a little rocky, but what if you took the very first step today on Father's Day and just said, Dad, thank you. Maybe you shoot him a text and say, Dad, I know it's been a little rough. I know it's been a little tense, a little strenuous, but Dad, I just want to say thank you. I just want to say happy Father's Day. I know it hasn't been easy. I know I haven't always been the easiest kid, but Dad, thank you. Do your words, do they build up? Are they appealing, or do they pour out like stench? And look what happens. Look at what he says. Look at verse 3. And this is a scary, scary thought. Verse 3. The Lord is watching everywhere, keeping his eye on both the evil and the good. The Lord is watching everywhere, keeping an eye on both the evil and the good. And so here's a question that I wrote down yesterday that I didn't like. It's one of those questions that I give you that I wrestle with. And when I said it, I didn't like it. It bothered me. It made me uncomfortable. And so here's the question. The question is this: would I say those words with that tone in front of Jesus? Would I say those words with that tone in front of Jesus? Because the truth is, we are. The way you respond to your kids, to your spouse, to your boss, to your coworkers, to your neighbor, the emails, the texts, the tone behind all of those, would you respond with those words and in that tone if Jesus were standing right there watching everything that you were doing? Because the truth of the matter is that he is. The Lord is watching everyone. He knows, and he knows your heart, and he knows your thoughts. And so when you understand that, all of a sudden the weight of your words takes on massive implications. Because you're not just saying it to the person there, you're not just writing it, but you're saying it in front of Jesus. Would you say those words in that tone if I knew Jesus was standing right there? Would I have that conversation on the phone if I knew Jesus was in my passenger seat listening to the whole thing? Words matter because once something is said, it can never be unsaid. Do your words build up or do they tear the person down? Jesus said it best. In Luke chapter 6, verse 45, he says, what you say flows from what is in your heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. And so if you're sitting here today and you've thought about past conversations, past tense moments, past things you can't believe you said, but you regret it, emails you sent, but you regret, what you say flows from what is in your heart. So it goes back to the question of the heart. And last week we said, the heart determines the course of our life. Thus the heart determines the course of our words. What you say flows from what is in your heart. And maybe many of us in this room may just need to pray the prayer that David prayed in Psalm 51:10. And the prayer is, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Create in me a clean heart, O God, toward my spouse, towards my kids, towards my coworkers, towards the world around me. My heart is hardened. It's in places that I don't want it to be. God, create in me a clean heart and let my words pour out accordingly to what you want me to say. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Your heart determines the course of your life. And it determines what you say. Do your words build up or do they tear down? Your words matter. Let me pray for us. Father, I can say from personal experience, this message is way easier to preach than it is to practice. Lord, I pray for not just the fathers, but for the mothers, for the kids, for the single adults, for the empty nesters, for the retired. God, everybody here in this room and watching on. Lord, my prayer is that they would ask themselves that difficult question. Would they say those words with that tone if they knew you were standing right next to them? And Lord, my prayer for so many of us here in this room, God, is that today they need to create a clean heart in them and renew a right spirit. And so just right now, as the music plays, maybe you just say, God, I have had a wrong heart. God, I've said some wrong things. Maybe there in this moment you lean over to the person next to you that you've offended. Maybe you send a text message, but you just go, you know what? I have said some wrong things in the wrong tone, and I'm sorry, and I know my words matter, and I want them to build up and not tear down. And then for many of you, the answer to that question of what's at the center of your heart, the answer is nothing. And your relationships are broken at best. They're on the fringes at best. And you're going, what is the matter? The matter is that Jesus is not at the center of your heart and of your life. Therefore, your words and your actions, they destroy people around you. And if you've never trusted Jesus, you've never placed him at the center of your heart, you can do that right now. Just say something quietly where you're sitting. Just say, today, Jesus, I make you the center of my heart and of my life. Save me, Jesus, become the Lord of my life and everything that I do. And I'll follow you from this day forward. Father, I pray for those people in this room that just maybe trusted you for the very first time, made you the center of their life and of their heart. Lord, I pray for the people in this room that they know they've trusted you, but their heart has some impure things going on. And God, my prayer is that you would create in them a clean heart and let their words pour out accordingly. Build up, encourage, challenge, cheer on, inspire, as opposed to discourage and break down and point out flaw after flaw after flaw. Lord, my prayer is that our words would be words that would bring honor and glory to you, Jesus. Lord, we love you and ask all these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.